Tonight at 10, we're live in Paris, where the left is jubilant as Marine Le Pen and her far-right National Rally Party fall far short of their aim of winning France's parliamentary election. As opponents of National Rally watched the early results tonight, relief that it had fallen short with its hardline anti-immigration proposals. Marine Le Pen's party, according to early forecasts, has come third when it was expected to top the poll.
But France is plunged into the political unknown with no party or bloc with enough seats to form a government.
Also tonight, Sir Keir Starmer begins a whistle-stop tour of the UK after his landslide election victory. In Edinburgh tonight, he held talks with First Minister John Swinney after Scotland's political landscape was redrawn. Meanwhile, the Defence Secretary heads to Ukraine and the Foreign Secretary arrives in Poland as Britain's new government gets to work. Britain's Emma Raducanu is knocked out of Wimbledon.
Wins the British Grand Prix.
And a record-breaking 9th triumph for Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone.
Good evening from Paris, where the second round of France's parliamentary elections looks set to deliver a very surprising result, with Marine Le Pen's far-right party forecast to come third in a poll in which they were expected to come top. This was an election in which her political opponents cooperated with each other in the hope of keeping her party from power. According to projections by French broadcaster France 2, the left-wing New Popular Front, seen here in red, appears to have the most votes. President Macron's ensemble, shown in purple, is in second place, and Marine Le Pen's anti-immigration National Rally in navy blue has been pushed into third after it won the most votes in the first round last weekend. But none of these groups is on course for an absolute majority. Our first report is from our Europe editor, Katya Adler, who was at National Rally's headquarters.
In a shock result for all and a huge relief for many here, the far-left coalition has unexpectedly become the biggest party in the French parliament, beating the far-right.
The vote is final. The defeat of the president and his coalition has been clearly confirmed.
Equally stunned by tonight's results, Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party. So sure victory would be theirs, except it wasn't.
At an absolute loss for words, it seems. This has been a huge slap in the face for Marine Le Pen's party. All the polls before this election have predicted they at least would become the largest party in the French parliament. They said they were poised to govern, but the French people today said a resounding no.
Confusingly, their star shone so brightly in the first round of this election.
Malheureusement.
Unfortunately, an alliance of dishonour and a dangerous electoral arrangement set up by this government with the far-left coalition has deprived the French people of a political recovery.
So, Emmanuel Macron's gamble, calling this snap election, paid off. Or did it? No party has a majority to govern in France now, and President Macron's Prime Minister has just announced his resignation. Just ahead of hosting the Olympic Games, with all eyes on France, this EU and military power, key ally of Ukraine, has plunged into political limbo. And when France is unstable and distracted, the impact can reverberate outside the country too. Katya Adler, BBC News, Paris.
Well, the National Rally campaigned on a strong anti-immigration platform, and clearly many French voters rejected that tonight. But the issue of large-scale immigration remains a deeply polarising one, not least on the Mediterranean coast and in the famous port city of Marseille, from where our correspondent Andrew Harding begins his report.
In the port city of Marseille, the immigration debate has dominated these elections. This has always been a diverse place, and Nigerian bar owner Prince Irogama sees that as a strength.
Because we have a family here, we have our children, we are trying to make the society to be better for the children to live.
But the rise of France's national rally with its fiercely anti-immigrant platform is alarming many communities here. The party is trying to divide French people, says Jonathan Kwame. That could be very dangerous. Incidents like this, rioting last year in Marseille, have been seized on by the national rally and by right-wing media. They've linked the violence to what they call uncontrolled immigration. The same goes for the city's undeniable problem of drug trafficking and gang violence. Pensioner Frank Bochet worries about security here. Our country has changed too much. We need more selective immigration, he says. They're dealing drugs just over there. All the youths have knives. But that's not the full picture. In this poor neighbourhood, communities are still finding ways to integrate, to challenge the polarising forces sweeping through France.
For me, France is a welcoming country, welcoming to everyone, a melting pot. It shouldn't matter where you come from.
Tonight, in cities across France, plenty of ethnically diverse communities are celebrating the election results. These people have gathered in a Paris suburb.
I am really relieved.
So a huge sense of relief in this particular crowd tonight, but also the knowledge that the ever more divisive debate about immigration does not end here. This is our home, they sing. Andrew Harding, BBC News, France.
Let's go back to Katya Adler, who's at National Rally's headquarters. And Katya, you described France as being in limbo. What happens next?
Well, it really is at sea, Reeta, because no party or bloc in France's parliament has enough seats to form a government. So that leads us here to political gridlock as a potentially very painful period of coalition building begins. And whatever happens, Emmanuel Macron emerges a weaker president. When he first took office back in 2017, he promised to banish the political extremes. But just look what happened tonight. Both the hard left and the hard right significantly increased their presence in France's parliament. Yes, Marine Le Pen's party didn't win the majority that it dreamt of, but it almost doubled the number of seats it has. So all of this insecurity and instability, it's likely to impact not just on France at home, but outside the country as well, because of the outsized role that France plays on the European and the global stage. And tonight, that is of concern to France's international allies.
And Katya, what about the issues raised in Andrew Harding's report about people who have worries about immigration, who may feel that their voices have been shoved to one side because the other parties cooperated with each other and against the National Rally? What happens to this issue?
Well, certainly here tonight, you did have that feeling amongst supporters of Marine Le Pen's party. They said, you know, the others, their opponents clubbed together against them. They smart at the fact that many in France see them as extremists and racists. They call themselves conservatives and nationalists. They say we're in a time of a cost of living crisis, and they think it makes sense to put France and the French first. So yes, they feel they have open wounds here tonight, but they were also trying to put a positive spin on it, because look at it, with each election, Marine Le Pen's National Rally party seems to get stronger and stronger. It performed stunningly in the European election last month. Its stars did shine, as I said, really brightly in the first round of this election. So the mood here tonight is we may not have won a majority tonight, but we're ready to govern and we'll be in that place tomorrow.
Katya, thank you very much. Katya Adler reporting there. Well, Marine Le Pen's National Rally remains a polarising force, and for all those people who are unhappy at tonight's result, there are many out on the streets of Paris tonight celebrating, happy and relieved at the outcome. It does look as if President Macron took a major gamble in calling these elections early, just as Rishi Sunak gambled in going to the country when he did. In France this evening, the wind does seem to have been taken out of the sails of the far right, but they are still forecast to have many more members of parliament, as Katia was saying, than before. And Mr. Macron has lost his prime minister. France's political landscape tonight looks very volatile indeed. Well, that is all from Paris this evening. Now back to you, Sophie, in the studio.
Reeta, thank you. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has travelled to Scotland at the start of a whistle-stop tour of the UK's nations. He's promising an immediate reset of relations with the devolved governments of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Sir Keir met Scotland's First Minister and SNP leader John Swinney in Edinburgh tonight. The two have been expected to pose for pictures outside Bute House, where the meeting took place, but it didn't happen because of a pro-Palestinian protest. Here's our Scotland editor, James Cook.
No one said being Prime Minister was easy. This was not part of the plan for Keir Starmer's third day in office. There was no handshake outside the First Minister's official residence, but a chat inside with chants about Gaza drifting in from the street. Afterwards, both sounded positive, with Sir Keir focusing on Scotland's only oil refinery, where hundreds of jobs are under threat.
We discussed the economy, we discussed energy, and as we'd expect, we discussed Grangemouth, which is a cause for concern, and our governments will work together on that issue straight away. And we agreed steps to make sure that we can make sure that delivery for Scotland is the #1 priority.
What I'm interested in as First Minister of Scotland is making a difference for the people of Scotland, of delivering on my objectives of eradicating child poverty, of delivering economic growth, of improving our public services and delivering net zero. And on many of those questions, there is common ground to be achieved by working collaboratively with the United Kingdom Government.
Earlier, there was a moment to savour for Scottish Labour after years of frustration, even at times despair. And the message here is pretty obvious, to stress the united in Kingdom.
We're serious about restoring devolution, resetting it, taking back to those founding principles where governments actually work together in the national interest. Cooperation over conflict, respect over suspicion, and making sure that we are delivering for every Scot right across the country.
Going from 1 MP in Scotland at the last election to 37 on Thursday was some shift for Labour. But the work isn't over. The party now hopes to win control of the Scottish Government from the SNP in the 2026 Holyrood elections. That means delivering the change Labour has promised to Scottish voters as quickly as possible. A huge challenge when the party has pledged to stick to Conservative spending plans. In Westminster elections, Scotland has now swung dramatically from Labour to the SNP and back again in less than a decade. It's prompted some soul-searching for supporters of independence, but it's also a warning to Labour that voters here can change their minds pretty quickly. Sir Keir swept out the back of Bute House this evening, heading for Northern Ireland, then Wales, before meeting English mayors. He'll hope the rest of the trip goes a bit more smoothly. James Cook, BBC News, Edinburgh.
Well, the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, is also on a whistle-stop tour of Europe. He travelled first to Poland, where he said he wanted to reset Britain's relations with the European Union. Our diplomatic correspondent, Paul Adams, reports.
Hey, so good to see you. The charm offensive begins. Good to see you. Very good to see you. Hello to the press. Hello. Hi. Welcome. Deep in the Polish countryside, a warm welcome for the new Foreign Secretary. A man on a mission to win friends and reassure allies, and where possible, to reset Britain's relationship with the EU.
In particular, we want to double down on our commitment to Ukraine and, of course, European security, including through joint bilateral projects between our defence industry and a new EU-UK security pact.
From his famously Anglophile host, an expression of kinship and a request.
We are a relatively fresh government in Poland too, and we are also the product of the public being tired with enthusiasts on the nationalist side of politics. So what we expect is a more pragmatic approach.
Ties off for a walk in the grounds, a chance it seems to bond. Each side speaking of creative ideas, but these are early days. This trip, with its focus on support for Ukraine, on relations with the EU and NATO, is not about instant results. It's all about perception, the perception of a government that's hitting the ground running. Which is why the new Defence Secretary was on the move too, in Ukraine with President Zelensky, meeting wounded soldiers in the southern city of Odessa. Britain has played a key role in arming Ukraine. That, the new government says, is not going to change.
Today I'm also announcing extra weaponry that the Ukrainians are using on the front line every day. And what they're also telling me is that they want the West's help to be speeded up. So I've also directed the MOD to make sure that within 100 days, everything that has previously been promised to Ukraine is delivered into Ukraine.
A moment to ponder this war's heavy cost. Britain saying to Ukraine, we're still here with you. Paul Adams, BBC News.
Negotiations about the future of the Tata steel plant at Port Talbot in South Wales have begun between the new government and the Indian owners of the business. The company's decision to close the blast furnaces and switch to greener production puts nearly 3,000 jobs at risk. It's understood any government support would involve some job guarantees. And the new Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is also expected to hit the ground running this week with announcements on the economy as soon as tomorrow. Our economics editor, Faisal Islam, is with me. What's she going to say?
Well, they've been very busy over the weekend at the Treasury with a set of policy announcements that could come as early as tomorrow. Just to manage expectations, this is not like we got in 1997 when the new Labour Chancellor announced independence of the Bank of England. But I think the Chancellor gave some clues when I spoke to her in the early hours after the election. She said there wasn't a huge amount of money around, and she also said that she was willing to have a fight with those people who are holding back big infrastructure projects, energy schemes, house building through the planning system. I think that's probably where we're going to get this announcement. But the broader context here is I think dozens of business leaders will hear this speech and it will be aimed at them. The bait will be these reforms and also the promise of political stability with this landslide Commons majority. And in return, what the government wants is masses of investment that can change the game very visibly up and down the country. So we'll see the detail of this tomorrow. Don't expect tax and spend changes. She'll be meeting with the OBR later in the week with a pathway to a budget in the autumn.
Faisal, thank you. Thousands of people have lined the streets in West Yorkshire to pay tribute to former Leeds Rhinos star Rob Burrow as a private funeral service was held. The 41-year-old died 4.5 years after he was diagnosed with motor neuron disease. He spent the last years of his life raising millions of pounds for charity and raising awareness of the disease. England faced the Netherlands in Dortmund on Wednesday in the semi-finals of the Euros. Fans have been celebrating after the team defeated Switzerland last night with a perfect set of penalties. Andy Swiss reports.
Here we go. Trent takes the net off!
Penalties used to bring only pain for England, not anymore.
England go through!
But after last night's nerve-jangling... Well, the fans here in Düsseldorf were treated to a marching band this morning. Not perhaps the best for bleary heads, but that dramatic win was all that mattered.
Oh, it was incredible. It was so tense, wasn't it? Just waiting to see if Trent would get that last one. It was intense.
Are you now more confident that England can go all the way?
It's got that feeling, hasn't it? You know, it's starting to turn, I think. I hope so. I hope so. It's the hope that kills you, right? So you never know.
Grounds for cautious optimism then, among the players as well.
We're finding ways to win, and that's an important factor in big competition. So we're enjoying it. We're enjoying the ride. We're proud to be in another semi-final. We know how much it means to everyone back home watching as well.
Well, many of the England fans here in Düsseldorf are now making their slightly weary way to Dortmund for a semi-final on Wednesday and what promises to be their toughest challenge yet.
Player for player, I would rather have the England squad than the Netherlands squad. Am I going to say England will blow them away? No. because they've not blown anyone away in this tournament yet. I'm thinking against a better opposition, they're going to have to lift it again.
When England last met the Netherlands at a major tournament, a certain Gareth Southgate was in the team, Euro '96, when they swept to a famous win.
And you have to say it's magnificent.
So can history repeat itself? Well, if it does, he and a new generation of England players will be tantalisingly close to glory. Andy Swiss, BBC News, Dusseldorf.
Emma Raducanu has been knocked out of Wimbledon in the 4th round. She was the last British singles player left in the championships, and she was beaten in 3 sets by New Zealand's Lulu Sun. Joe Wilson reports.
Emma Raducanu prepared, on top of her tennis, at ease with her decisions. The Andy Murray mixed doubles that didn't happen, ultimately not her priority. Forward to the singles. Well, centre court had been captivated by Carlos Alcaraz, through in 4 gripping sets. It was half empty when Raducanu came on. The energy came from her opponent, Lulu Sun, playing in her first ever Wimbledon. Well, keep watching and listening. Second set to Raducanu. Now there's centre court. What would happen next? Well, she slipped. Lengthy treatment followed. Emma Raducanu played on, able to move, but not to stop Lulu Sun. 6-2 in the 3rd. Raducanu lost to a fearless, inspired opponent, but had some of the negative reaction to her mixed doubles decision affected her.
There was a bit of a cloud around the decision, but I don't think I would have done it any other way. I think, you know, in this sport, especially as it's individual, you have to make your own calls and prioritise yourself.
Well, remember, Emma Raducanu began this Wimbledon ranked way outside the world's top 100. Her broad aim is to rebuild her career after injury and surgery. So try to keep that context in mind as we say goodbye to the last British singles player here this year. Joe Wilson, BBC News at Wimbledon.
Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton has won the British Grand Prix for a record 9th time, his first Formula One victory since 2021. He finished ahead of Red Bull's Max Verstappen and his fellow Briton, the McLaren driver Lando Norris. From Silverstone, here's Natalie Perks.
A familiar Silverstone result, but this one hit different. Sir Lewis Hamilton's record 9th British Grand Prix win and his final for Mercedes brought all the emotions.
This is my last race here at the British Grand Prix with this team, so I wanted to win this so much for them because I love them, I appreciate them so much, all the hard work they've been putting in all of these years.
All 3 British drivers started at the front, but who'd come out on top?
It's lights out and away we go!
Both Mercedes got out well, but Lando Norris's McLaren wobbled and Max Verstappen pounced. But Norris struck back and fans were soon singing in the rain as the old master, Lewis Hamilton, used his guile to snatch the lead from his teammate. The rain was wreaking havoc. George Russell had to retire, Lando Norris made mistakes and Lewis took full advantage. A tense showdown saw Verstappen snatch second, but he couldn't catch an emotional Hamilton.
Wins the British Grand Prix!
Thank you so much, guys. It means a lot.
A tearful hug with Dad after the 39-year-old's first race win in 2.5 years.
Well, those conditions made it tricky for most, but Lewis Hamilton seemed to relish them. 16 years from his first British Grand Prix win, he was back here and getting a hug from Brad Pitt.
This win then the perfect example that form is temporary, but class is permanent. Natalie Perks, BBC News, Silverstone.
Let's have a look at the latest weather now. Louise Lear is here. I was just asking her if it was particularly bad at this time of year, because it just...
You weren't asking, you were moaning. You
I
were
was
moaning like everybody else
raining.
that I see at the moment. I'm not offended, don't worry. This time last week, I stood here and said, no 2 days the same. Well, forget no 2 days the same, no 2 hours the same. Sunshine 1 minute, threatening-looking skies and rumbles of thunder across the country. We really have seen quite a cluster of sharp showers showers today, but the weather story will gradually improve overnight. But it looks pretty unsettled for the next few days. Here's the front that brought the showers through the day. Lighter winds overnight, quite a chilly start actually tomorrow morning, and more rain down in the southwest. And we start off tomorrow morning with some early morning sunshine. It really will be the early bird that gets the worm, unfortunately, because clouding over as we go through the afternoon with outbreaks of rain down to the south, and a few scattered sharp showers will be slow to clear because the winds will be so light across Scotland. So look at these temperatures, 12 to 15 degrees across the far northeast. We might see 19 in a little more shelter around the Glasgow area, 17 for Northern Ireland and the high teens perhaps for Northern England. Here is where we'll have the best of the sunshine. Clouding over across central Wales through the Midlands and East Anglia, but some showery rain pushing into the southwest, which will gradually move towards the London area. So SW19 once again during the afternoon could see some interruption with the play due to rain, and that rain will slowly push its way northwards as we go through the early part of Tuesday. So a really wet story across Northern Ireland, Northern England, across the Scottish borders, and then sandwiched either side, quite a humid feel across England and Wales. Some sharp, possibly thundery showers returning, but those temperatures are still pretty disappointing for this time of year. Now the front lingers into the far north once again, but later on into the week there is the potential for a brief ridge of high pressure to build. Only brief, but if you can, you've got to make the most of these windows of finer weather. So yes, Wednesday, Thursday, once again, a cool feel for this time of year, but we might see some sunshine if we're lucky Friday into Saturday. That, I'm afraid, is the best I can offer you. Sophie.
It's not great, but thank you, Louise. And that's it from us. That's the BBC News at 10 on BBC One. Now it's time to join our colleagues for the news where you are. Good night.